Welcome to the Bullpen Show. It's Palmetto Games week, and we're fired up to be able to talk with you guys about what we have going on this weekend in Sumter. I'm Austin Alexander. I've got Cory Welch with me. Cory, you ready to talk a little bit about Palmetto Games?
I am, Austin. It's the most exciting weekend of the year for us. We put a ton of work into it, so I'm ready to talk about it for a little bit.
Man, let's fire away. Well, we first just want to before we get into Palmetto Games, one of the things we enjoy doing is talking about some of the players that have been in the Palmetto Games in the past, guys that hail from South Carolina. Bryce Tedosio just got called back up to the big leagues with the Angels, went 3 for 3 on Monday night, so I want to give him a shout out. Also, Eli White was getting some time back with the Braves and made capitalize on that. I don't know, some of you guys may have been following what was going on in Tennessee. They had the baseball game at the racetrack, and Eli White hit a couple homers, so he's the only big leaguer in the history of the game to be able to hit a major league home run in a major league game in the state of Tennessee. So shout out to Eli White from Wren, and of course another upstate guy, Bryce Tedosio, for doing well in the big leagues. Well, let's get to not the guys that have played in the Palmetto Games before, but to what we have going on. So this weekend we're going to be in Sumter at Riley Park. Bobby Richardson Field is what they're calling it now, too. And so we're looking forward to being back 2020, 2021, back to South Carolina during that period in between that. And then last year we went back to Sumter and we're able to enjoy another good experience there and look forward to going back to super host. And we're looking forward to going back to Sumter and being able to watch the exploits of these guys once again. So Cory, one of the things that we spend most of our time on throughout the year is preparing for this, and this is kind of the culmination of a lot of work for our whole staff. And when we're covering games in the spring, of course, we got our events during the summer, and we're seeing a lot of baseball during the summer as well. The fall leagues are a huge thing that we do, and we're always trying to identify players. And this is going to be the stage of the efforts of a lot of our staff, a lot of people that we talk to, in an effort to try to put the top players that are on the field. It's an invite only, a very strict invite only. There are a lot of players that certainly would love to be a part of. It's really hard to draw that line when we have to, construct that first line of who we're going to invite. And that was one thing that we wanted this thing to be years ago. When we first started this back in 2008, it was actually the idea and brainchild of Ray Tanner, who was the longtime head coach at South Carolina. South Carolina didn't have anything like this when we started DP in '06. Really nothing like a statewide all-star game for upcoming juniors and seniors. And so that was something that he wanted. He wanted to do it at South Carolina, so we did. Up until 2020, up until 2020, all of our events had been there, either at Sarge Fry Field, of course, at Founders Park. And so over the years, we've been able to see the exploits of a lot of really good players, a lot of really, really cool things that have happened at these events. I've got my favorite memories. Cory, as you think back to some of the things that you enjoy, I first want to, before we do that, I want to thank all the former players that I reached out to in the last month. If you've noticed on our social media, each day we've put a different former player that played in the Palmetto Games, ranging from guys that have had a lot of time in the big leagues to guys that are retired from Major League Baseball that played in the Palmetto Games, all the way through guys that are in the minors, guys in college, and even some players that played in the event just last year. So hopefully you've enjoyed some of those as they kind of chimed in with some of their favorite memories from the events that they went to. But we have, we've been to a few of these things. So before we get into this year and previewing the 2025 crop, Cory, what are some of the best memories you have from the years you've been coming to the Palmetto Games?
Yeah, so this will be my eighth Palmetto Games, Austin. I'm not as deep as you are in it, but there are two that really stick out to me. And the first one being, I believe it was 2019 or 2018. I'm not real sure, but Evan Sierra got the start. He was only like a sophomore, which is kind of rare for us to start a sophomore on Saturday. But he was at Landrum at the time. I know he got the start on the mound and was sitting 91, 92. We have a ton of scouts there, and one of the scouts stood up and turned back to everybody and said, well, guys, pack your bags. We're headed to Landrum. So, that's not a place where we usually go to, but you got a good chuckle on a Saturday night. And then the other one was last year. I got a kick out of this when Carson Bowman started. He ended up, he struck out 4 in his inning of work, but one of them was a drop strike 3 that the guy got to first base and he had 2 outs and he almost picked the guy off. And when he went to pick, it was just like a sigh of, people like, don't pick the guy off. We'd rather see you throw towards the plate. So, there are countless other memories, but, those two, and with me being a pitching guy, those are two that really stick out to me.
There for all of them, and certainly a long list of players that we've been able to see and enjoy. And so to try to put that into a little bit of a capsule, kind of tough, but just a few that pop out in my head. And maybe this is because I've been talking to this guy a good bit since he's retired from baseball and gotten into coaching. Daniel Palka was in the first event that we actually had at Founders Park. And Daniel Palka was known for his power. He had a lot of home runs in the big leagues, as it turned out. But back when he was a kid at Greer High School, he thought he was a base stealer, and he was a pretty good one for a big guy. This was going to go and go and go until somebody was standing in front of him with a baseball and he was out. But we didn't have official records back then. I don't know how many bags he took, but he still enjoys telling the story to this day. He ended up being the most outstanding player at the 2009 Palmetto Games, Daniel Palka. And then a few years ago in Sumter, I don't remember if it was 2020 or 2021, TJ White from Dorman decided to pull out wood. Guys can swing wood if they want to. Most guys swing aluminum, and that's fine. But he was getting ready for pro ball, and he ended up hitting 2 balls in the woods, both with wood, and that was in back-to-back at bats. That was a pretty good way to finish that particular event on that Sunday. I go back a little further, 2010. Taylor Guerreri is the top arm that has really come through the DP era as far as where he was drafted. Former first rounder out of Spring Valley. At the time, he was at North Augusta. Kind of what you described with Sierra and Bowman, just rolling through hitters. And it was just an iconic 6 outs where he just it was lights out. It was 96, 97 with sink and the slider and everything that comes with it. And obviously, because of that, he ended up being a first rounder. And it just gives you an idea that good players have come through this event. A lot of just unbelievable exploits. We've been able to have a front row seat too, and so many good players have come through here. But so many guys have really been able to impact their careers. I think about Mike Morrison, who's now the pitching coach at Alabama. Well, fast forward back to I think it was 2000. He ended up winning the Golden Arm Award that particular year. But he tells the story. It's pretty cool. He wasn't planning on coming that day. His brother dragged him out of bed. He was thinking about giving up baseball, and he decided to go to the Palmetto Games because he had been invited to it, and decided just to go down the street to Founders Park, and he threw. Coastal Carolina saw him. He ended up getting an opportunity to go to Coastal Carolina. He ended up pitching in the World Series and being a huge part of that team that won it in 2016. Now he's still in baseball, impacting lives as a coach at Alabama. So those are just a handful of wonderful stories that have come out of this event. We tell players all the time, look, no pressure, but it's a good weekend to have a good weekend because all the eyes are on you. We set the stage and turn the lights on and just give them the opportunity. I think of a couple things too that happen too. When you do 18 of these things, you get a little bit of everything. You get every kind of weather there is. You get all kinds of delays, things you don't see coming. We certainly didn't see one year. We were at Founders again, and they had some issues with the foundation out in left field, and so there were some problems out there, and it set off a fire alarm. The fire alarm went off, and it's loud, like really loud. And so we're trying to figure out what to do with that. What do you do with how long is this going to last? Well, we decided to play through it because you can. It wasn't a lightning delay. They won't let you to play through. And so we ended up playing, I think, 2.5 innings with just piercing sirens going on the entire time till the fire crew came and was able to get to that. Rain delays galore. We've had so many rain delays, lightning delays, things like that. And we just kind of keep trucking, doing the best we can to stay on schedule and execute the game plan that we have sorted out. This week, Cory, it's unseasonably cool. We've had about every kind of weather you can have, but we haven't had 70 something, which is what we've been able to enjoy. I don't know that it's going to be that on Saturday, Sunday, but it looks like we got some rain leading up to it. But you and I were talking a little bit before we started. Tell folks what we experienced last year. We had the hurricane stall right over Sumter leading up to it. Do you remember? It's amazing how much rain we got. And then, of course, the crew was able to take care of the field. You remember that?
Oh, yeah, I remember that. And I mean, the thing I kind of want to urge people, I'm sure you've gotten some texts and I have as well, but we'll communicate. I promise we will. We won't leave you out to dry. The biggest thing to do is to follow, once we get closer to the event, everything on social media. We'll keep everyone up to date. If there's a schedule change or anything like that, and, Austin, you're like me. If you hear nothing, that means we're on as planned. So, we don't want to make a decision on Tuesday or Wednesday for Saturday. So.
Amen. And after what we witnessed last year, Brock McDaniel, shout out to Brock McDaniel and his staff down at Sumter. They do a tremendous job. And even after we'd had all that rain last week, the week leading up to the event, then we got bombed again on Saturday night. And lo and behold, we were out there playing baseball at 9 o'clock as scheduled on Sunday morning. So if we get that break in the weather, we'll be able to execute everything. And that's certainly the game plan. So, but once that happens, let's kind of shift to what it's 2025. We've got a brand new crop of guys, some returners, obviously, that have been in previous events, but kind of what you can expect, folks, from this coming one. We expect scouts to show up. We expect talent to be there. We'll see some guys, lighting up the radar gun. We'll see some guys swing the bat pretty good, and that's what we show up for. This year, we're adding a brand new dimension to it. As long as we're still working out the kinks, I think we're okay. We've brought back our YouTube channel, and maybe that's how you're listening to us right now, or on social media in some sense. But the YouTube channel we started years ago when Leo Mazzoni actually spoke at one of our pro days, and I hadn't done much with YouTube until here recently. So we're bringing that back, and with that, it allows us to do a live stream, and they have the capability in the press box and with the cameras at Sumter. Our goal is to execute a pretty well done YouTube live stream, ways for people, if they can't get there, to be able to see it, or if they want to go back and watch it after the fact. Trey Dyson, friend of DP, long time, years, back at around 2020, around the 2000, early 2000s. He was a standout player for South Carolina, and then had a stint in pro ball, been in college coaching. He's going to be doing the play-by-play, and if you've ever been around Trey, you know Trey. Trey does a super job with that, so he's going to be doing the play-by-play. But what we're also going to have, in addition to obviously being able to see what's going on with the live stream, what we're also going to have with Trey calling the play-by-play is just a rotation of guests that'll be popping up into the booth, whether it be the coaches that we have on the field coming up after they play, or when their team is not scheduled for action. Those coaches will be coming in and kind of giving their 2 cents. But if you've been to this event before, we have a lot of high school coaches that come and watch their players play, if they got kids in it, or just, high school coaches that are fans of high school baseball. They'll be showing up. So we'll be, throughout the course of those 2 days, you and I and our staff will be citing some of them and asking them to go upstairs and hang out with Trey for a couple innings. So you'll be able to have a potpourri of different voices that'll be hopping on with Trey. So that's a new feature. We'll figure out how we can get that to you, but it definitely will be on our Diamond Prospects YouTube channel. That'd be one way that you can tune into it, hopefully live while everything's going on, and certainly after the event's over, you'll be able to go back for the guys that are on the field and go back and see what they look like on video there. So that's something we haven't done before. Looking forward to it. I think that'd be wildly popular, particularly for grandparents or just folks that are out of town on work and just can't get there and watch their kids play, or people they're interested in. That'll be available. So we'll make sure we put all that in all of our social media that we send out. It'll be on our website, YouTube channel, Diamond Prospects live streams. From there, Cory, we just want to kind of preview this one. All right. So we're days away now. If you kind of could talk a little bit about some of the honorary coaches that we do each year, why we do that, and who those guys are for this year's group.
Yeah, I mean, every year, and I don't think we've had a repeat customer, Austin, as far as coaches go. It's always has been someone that's, it's their first Palmetto Games coaching and things like that. And it's something that, I feel like a lot of the coaches in the area take a lot of pride in, get an opportunity to represent their program and even their region. So for this year, for the Northwest team and Northeast, which are both in the upstate, Northwest, we have John Bolton from JL Mann. And then in the Northeast is Jesse Dyer from Spartanburg High School. In the Midlands area, Rob Botnight, the recent state champion at Batesburg-Leesville. He'll be leading the Midwest team. And then Hank Walford is with the Mid-East. He's the head coach at Clover High School. And then down at the coast with the Southwest group, we have Skylar Hunter, who's one of the best coaches in the state. And then for the Southeast Gold, we got the hometown guy, Will McMillan, who's the head coach at Sumter. With it being in Sumter, it worked out. And, he's been a great supporter of us and has led good programs at Sumter and East Clarendon even prior to that. I mean, these guys, it's whenever we call them and ask them to do it, we tell them, you ain't got to do the lineups. You don't have to make any great decisions. It's just, getting in the dugout, enjoying those guys' company, getting to know people that you compete against, and then also waving them around third so we can have some plays at the plate and things like that. So everybody seems to enjoy it. We want them to be involved, and I think this is a great way for that to happen.
We appreciate all 6 of those guys saying yes when we asked. And we do. We try to make it very, very easy and pleasurable for them just to be able to enjoy some good baseball over the course of those couple of days. And so thank you to those 6 guys for saying yes, and look forward to seeing you guys on the weekend. And then Bobby Richardson, each time we've done it and done this event in Sumter, he's kind of the de facto mayor, I guess, of Sumter. He's a former MVP of the World Series, 1960 World Series MVP. Longtime a friend of Mickey Mantle, and he'll tell that story. He tells it so well. But each year we've been there, he comes and he talks for about 10 minutes. He takes the microphone and addresses the entire crowd and speaks to some of the players while he's there, signs some autographs. So we're fortunate to have him back. I always appreciate him being a fan of DP and coming in and speaking his words of wisdom over these young men. And he'll pray with us, and then we'll start. And so from there, basically, when he wraps up, we will have taken the pictures with that first group. We have 3 sessions coming in. The schedule is on Diamond Prospects. The first 2 will be the mid teams, the Mid East, Midwest, and each group that comes in. Well, when we start, basically we'll run to 60, and we're going to do that on turf. We did that last year because the outfield was so wet. This year we realized, and whether it's wet or it's dry, we're going to run on the turf right there between right field and home plate. In foul ground is all turf, and so we're going to do that. We'll run the 60s. We'll go into batting practice. We'll do a defensive workout, which is basically your pregame in and out, and then we'll play baseball. And so we'll do that 3 different times. With session 1, then those guys will leave. Another session will come in. I think it's the South comes in second, and then the North comes in third. So each one of them will actually be able to execute the 60s, the BP, the in and out, and then, of course, culminating in a 7-inning game on Saturday. And then Sundays, just games. They'll warm up in the cages, and then we'll shotgun out 3 games. Right now, we've got them all scheduled for 9 innings. If something were to happen weather-wise, we'll make alterations if we need to. If we need to extend the guy, those could end up being 10-inning games if necessary. Obviously, our goal is to make sure every kid who's there to pitch gets on the mound. Every kid that's there to get swings gets as many ABs as possible. A lot of the pitchers that are coming there primarily to pitch will do that, but I don't think that many of them are going to have too many complaints, whether they're throwing 3 outs or 6. They're going to have a pretty heavy dose of onlookers and scouts who'll be able to lock in on them. And honestly, folks, 3 outs is plenty. We get what we need to in that, but we want to make sure, obviously, we want to make sure we play enough innings so these guys get ABs and plenty of time playing the game. And because let me get to that in just a second. Cory, if you could kind of talk a little bit about how the roster construction, and of course going into rotations. We've got all these players. We invite, all the top players that we see, and not really taking into account position necessarily when we're choosing who deserves to be there. But then we got to put these rosters together and put together teams and make sure it's competitive. If you could kind of talk a little bit about how we go from taking all these names to also how we actually slot them by team.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of it's not a little, it's a big puzzle for what we do. But ideally, what we want to do is have everyone in their geographic region. We don't select the players from the Palmetto Games just because of where you're at there. We initially invite the best players that we feel like deserve to be there. And then from there, we go to slotting them up. And typically, more times than not, though, it is pretty wild how does work out. But there are a couple of outliers and things like that. So typically, in the Northwest, we want to keep those guys that are up in the Blue Ridge Mountains, Greenville area towards Walhalla and things like that in the Northwest. But when you're doing the rosters, you want to make sure that you have enough pitchers. You want to make sure the catchers is a key component as well. Pitchers and catchers, to me, kind of dictate the entire roster. And then with the number of infielders and outfielders as well. There are instances where there are times where we have to move players from the Northwest to the Southeast and things like that. But, whenever we're doing that, we're real cognizant on if they have someone else from their high school, we may move 2 of those guys rather than just moving player A from, JLman High School and then player B from JLman to the Southeast and things like that. So typically another thing I feel like, Austin, that we've done is that's a lot, when we move those players just with the younger players. If you are, and I remember this, I can go back, David Lewis played at Blue Ridge. His first Palmetto Games, I think he was a freshman or something like that. He played for the Charleston team. And I remember calling his dad and explaining that. And his dad's like, well, we're just glad we're there. So, that's kind of the way it should be, as far as getting them to where they need to be and things like that. And then the second piece is a rotation. Some guys throw 1 inning, some guys throw 2. That kind of comes down. Obviously we've been following these guys all year. A lot of it is workload for what they've done and things of that nature. If they're committed, uncommitted, if it's something that they really need to be seen from pro scouts and things of that nature. So there's a lot of pieces that go into this. I know we did post the rotation earlier this week, and that's to give those guys time to prepare. Later on this week, we will post a final one because obviously there are changes and things like that, but it'll be minimal changes. I typically don't switch the days in which kids are maybe throwing. It may just change the innings and things like that. But we want to get that out early in the week from a pitching standpoint so those guys can prepare and be at their best on Saturday and Sunday. I have a lot of questions like, if I'm throwing on Sunday, does that mean I need to come on Saturday? I I personally think it's a good thing. Very rarely do we have players, Austin, I think you can attest to this, that do that and just show. And it's because just enjoying being in the dugout, being with your friends, part of the experience is what I tell people. Typically, those guys that do come, they enjoy it. So even though, you see that you're throwing on Sunday, that doesn't mean that we don't want you there on Saturday. Come be a part of it, enjoy the festivities, enjoy the game, and things of that nature as well.
No, you're exactly right. And you hit on all the right points there. It really is about the total experience. I mean, it is about you when you're on the mound or in the box. It is your personal showcase in that moment, but there's so much more that comes with this weekend. And as these guys were actually sending these videos back and talking about what their favorite memories were, a lot of it stemmed from just time in the dugout with guys that typically they're having to play against or only heard about or read about or seen video of or whatever. Now they're, sharing a dugout and sharing some memories together. More than their at bat or more than their time actually in between the lines is the experience too. So when you hear that kind of thing, I would think the kids would want to show up for both days because they can still at least hang out, build some friendships, because these guys are going to be, when you pull this many good players together and put them on the same field over the course of 2 days. I mean, these guys are going to be running into each other long after we leave Sumter this weekend, whether it be on our high school fields this next spring, but in a lot of cases, college fields, professional fields. One day they'll be teammates in pro ball or running into each other as adversaries in pro ball. So that's going to happen when you bring in that much talent. Like I said, you hit the nail right on the head. That's just an added bonus to the baseball and being able to work out in front of the scouts. So that's one of the things we look forward to being able to provide for folks. We tell people all the time, we don't make the player, we just give them the opportunity to sell themselves. And this is just it's our banner weekend. It's the weekend that we really look forward to each year. It's our marquee event. It's the one that we probably spend the most time talking to other people about. It's what we're constantly trying to do is find the right guys or the best guys possible, in our opinion, to be able to put on this stage. And so now we're right here at it, and we're going to do everything we can to cover it as well as you want us to, and when you walk in the ballpark, the music's going to be playing. We'll have a top flight announcer. Parents, you'll have you'll have parent books and a program that gives you number 16. You'll be able to look on your pages. You'll be able to know who these guys are. So not only will the players get a chance to experience one another, the parents, the people who follow high school baseball that are there interested in seeing, who these next wave of talented, next wave of college and professional players are. They're going to be in Sumter this weekend, and you'll be able to know who you're actually watching while you're there. The ballpark environment there, I remember the first year we did it in Sumter, and you might have been one of the first ones that came to us, and it came to me, and we're talking about just how good the atmosphere was, just the old professional ballpark, just the sounds, just you can hear the pop in the mid. It just sounds a little different than an older ballpark. It's not a 8,000, 9,000 square foot, seating capacity place. I mean, so it gets full in there, particularly when we're transitioning from one game to another, and the next teams are already there. The middle section is usually full of scouts, and then as you branch out to the sides, I mean, there are people everywhere, and there's atmosphere, and in the close games bring some energy, and so we get a chance to experience that, and it's just a lot of fun, and we're really looking forward to it, and hopefully you guys are too, and be able to join us there. Social media wise, I mentioned we're going to be doing the YouTube channel with the live stream, so hopefully we'll be able to tap into that. But we'll have guys on the ground, actually literally on the field, running around, getting some video, putting stuff into social media on Twitter, X, and Instagram. They'll be doing some on-field interviews with different guys, players. You may get pulled aside and right after you score or do something dramatic, and they may want your opinion on something. And we'll be able to throw that on social media too. So we'll do the best we can with all that. But for me, this old timer, I enjoy the baseball. When I can point myself towards the field, we'll be dealing with a lot of other things, a lot of putting out fires all over the place. Hopefully we'll have minimal curveballs. The weather will cooperate and we can actually lock in and enjoy the baseball. But for me, the meat and potatoes is the baseball and watching good players play it. And that's what I enjoy the most about this event. That's what I'm looking forward to the most about this particular event. And if we do get curveballs, we'll foul them off with the best of them and just keep on trucking. So if you're out there and you're praying for weather, pray for good weather so these boys will have the opportunity to step on that field. And so once the event's over, all right, so we talked about whether to talk about players, and in this particular podcast, that would probably open up a Pandora's box if we just started talking about 2 or 3 players, because there's so many good players that will be there. So what we're going to reserve that for is once the event's over. So Cory, if you could kind of talk about once the final pitch is thrown in Sumter and everybody's headed back and in most cases headed back to school on Monday, give folks an idea of what they can expect throughout the next week after the Palmetto Games.
Yeah, and that's when it gets really busy for you and I, Austin, and our staff. Right after the Palmetto Games, we'll post all the the data from the event, the top bolts, the 60s, position player velo, things like that. We do accolades with the award winners, and then we also dive into writing some guys up, which we stay away from at Pro Day, but for this, we kind of spotlight some of those guys. We'll do a podcast, and then the photos from the award winners and things like that. So there'll be a lot that goes in, and then even for the players, this will generate a lot of interest for them, from schools. At the end of the day, that's what this is for. So there'll be a lot of players that after the last pitch is thrown, it'll get busy for them as well. Even looking at this list, this was something I was going to touch on as we start to close. There are years where you look at the Palmetto Games rosters, going into it, and it's almost like the committed games. That's what it used to kind of turn into. But with the changes in the recruiting rules and things like this is probably the least number of committed players we've had going into an event. And that makes that exciting. It makes it really a feeding frenzy for college coaches and even some pro guys to get a chance to look at these guys and things like that as well. So, that's going to be interesting. So it'll be busy on our end, but it also will be busy on the players' end as well.
Very good points. All very good points. Yeah, it is nuts how many guys do, hold off for the Palmetto Games, hold their commitments off. I'm sure some kids are probably getting pressure from schools wanting to get them locked up before we take the field on Saturday. But yeah, it's usually a cavalcade of guys that are making their decisions once we wrap up on Sunday. So listen, folks, we appreciate you joining us. We covered a lot of ground there. Hopefully you're able to catch some of it. But more than anything else, hopefully you'll be able to catch the action this weekend in Sumter. So we'll be there. A ton of talent will be there. Hopefully, once again, a lot of scouts, college coaches, pro scouts be rolling in to see what happens out in between the lines here at Riley Park in Sumter. So hopefully we'll see you at the ballpark. If you can't catch it at the ballpark, maybe you can catch our live stream on YouTube, our YouTube channel of the Palmetto Games this year in Sumter. So we just want to thank everybody for joining us. If we get a chance, we'll be running around, but hopefully we get a chance to shake your hand, speak to you while we're there. We definitely want to. But hopefully you're as excited as we are to catch the 18th annual Palmetto Games at Riley Park in Sumter. So for all Cory Welch, I'm Austin Alexander signing off. Hopefully we'll see you this weekend.